You are taking a look at one of the tweets coming in from the Israel Defense Forces. We'll talk more about that in a second, but we do know that Israel has now launched ground raids targeting the Hezbollah terror group in southern Lebanon. The Israel Defense Force is saying these are, quote, limited, localized, and targeted, and are based on precise intelligence against Hezbollah terrorist targets and infrastructure. The Israeli military adding the targets are in villages that are close to the border and pose a threat to the people of northern Israel. Over the past few days, Israel has taken out several high-ranking members of Hezbollah, and that, of course, does include the terror group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. He was killed in a strike on the group's headquarters in Lebanon while Prime Minister Netanyahu was actually in the U.S. delivering a speech to world leaders at the United Nations. What you have right here is, again, an image coming in from the Israel Defense Forces as they say a missile that was fired by Hezbollah at Israel fell on a village there. It's an Arab village in central Israel after Hezbollah once again fired projectiles at the central part of the country. Hezbollah doesn't care who or how. They only care about harming Israelis. Do want to talk more about really all of the developments, as there are so many of them happening really all over the place. Enia Krivine is the Senior Director of the Israel Program and the National Security Network at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join us here.
Always great to be with you, Josh.
All right, so first off, the big question here. We are told that the situation there in southern Lebanon, we're told by the IDF, is limited in scope. What do you make of that? Is it possible that the situation does escalate from there?
There's always a possibility that things could escalate, Josh, but the IDF have said, in fact, just in the past hour, the IDF spokesman said, we are not going to Beirut. This is supposed to be a very specific and very localized operation with a very clear goal. As you'll remember, just 2 weeks ago, Prime Minister and his government in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, announced a new war goal, and that was to return the citizens of the north to their homes. Of course, the prior war goals since October 7th had all been focused on Gaza, on dismantling Hamas, on bringing the hostages home, and making sure that Gaza was never a place that Hamas could launch future attacks from. So they were all focused on Gaza, and then 2 weeks ago, Israel turned its attention to the north and announced this new goal, which is to bring people home. Notice that there's nothing in there about destroying Hezbollah. There's nothing in there about destroying the capabilities or the organization as a whole. It's just simply creating the conditions necessary to bring tens of thousands of Israelis who've been displaced from their homes for almost a year now, to give them the circumstances they need in order to go back to their homes, farms, and businesses that have largely been neglected over the past year, as Hezbollah has targeted them with thousands of rockets. So I think what we're going to see is something very different to what we've seen in Gaza. And ultimately, the goal is to allow Israeli citizens to go home.
And right now on the left side of your screen, you're looking at a live image coming in out of Lebanon. Now, we have received this question a lot, and I'm hoping you can provide some context and help explain it here. The Lebanese army, how do they feel about all of this? And what do they think about Hezbollah? Do they fight alongside Hezbollah as all of this is happening, or are they two very separate entities?
So the Lebanese armed forces, the first thing that's important to know about them is that they are funded largely by the international community, and the U.S. is one of their donors. And there's been a debate in Washington for many years about the utility of the Lebanese armed forces and how effective they are at carrying out their mandate as this sovereign military of Lebanon. However, we know that under the nose of the Lebanese armed forces, Hezbollah, which is an Iran-backed, Iran-funded terror organization, has managed to become as powerful as a small state. They have, as you know, Josh, an arsenal of over 150,000 rockets, or at least they did before they started this confrontation with Israel. They have huge manpower, huge capabilities, and we've seen that over the past 11 months. So one has to ask themselves, if the Lebanese armed forces were truly fulfilling their mandate, would there be this massive terror organization under their nose? So the debate still continues. What I anticipate as this confrontation sort of plays out between Israel and Hezbollah, I anticipate that the LAF, the Lebanese Armed Forces, will largely step back. We've already seen reports that they've vacated southern Lebanon. They are not likely to want to go into a full confrontation with the IDF. They are likely to want to kind of stay out of it. And that's all that apparently that they've been asked to do in this conflict. Again, a debate raging in Washington and other places, I'm sure, about the utility of this internationally funded army that allows Hezbollah to become what it has right under its nose.
President Biden was asked about the situation, this ground operation over in southern Lebanon, even though Israel said it is going to be limited in scope and it's based on information that we've received, military information, intelligence, and things of that nature. President Biden said he is against it altogether. Does Netanyahu take any of the thoughts of Biden into account when he decides what is going to happen?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of mixed messaging from the White House over the past couple of weeks, and indeed over the past year. You'll remember that very soon after the attacks of October 7th, Biden came out and made a speech in which he said, "Don't." And many interpreted that "don't" to be a message to Israel's adversaries, indeed America's adversaries in the region. Think Hezbollah, the Houthis, the militias in Iraq and Syria, etc., and even potentially Iran. But Israel also heard that "don't" directed at Israel. In other words, he was telling both sides to stand down. And this has been the message, or the official messaging from DC since October 7th. So there's been immense pressure on Israel not to go into Lebanon, not to take the fight to Hezbollah. And Israel has gone along with intensive diplomacy efforts led by the White House, by Amos Hochstein, who's their special envoy and who's been spending a lot of time shuttling back and forth between DC and Lebanon in order to try and get some sort of diplomatic arrangement, which Israel has called on the international community to come up with. Of course, there was a diplomatic arrangement before the war. It was the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, which was voted on by the Security Council after the last conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in 2006. And the Resolution 1701 states very clearly that Hezbollah should not be in southern Lebanon. There should not be, the only armed presence below the Litani River in southern Lebanon should be the Lebanese armed forces that we were just discussing, Josh. However, no one has, especially Hezbollah, has kind of decided not to go along with 1701. The international peacekeeping troops and the Lebanese armed forces and all of the mechanisms that were put in place to try and enforce 1701 have utterly failed. Diplomacy has failed, and Israel has sustained almost 10,000 rockets. In the recent days, rockets have been coming into the center and threatening millions of Israelis. So as you can see, there was diplomacy in place beforehand. There has been ongoing diplomacy for the past year, and it seems that the diplomacy has just got Israel nowhere, and it's decided to take matters into its own hands. And we see the Biden administration is kind of reluctantly going along with this. We've seen it sort of saying that it's within Israel's right to defend itself, and this is in line with Israel's right to defend itself. So I think that there's kind of a dance going on now between Jerusalem and Washington, and Israel's asking for the time and space it needs to clear the space in southern Lebanon, to ensure safety and security to the residents of northern Israel so that they can go home.
It's been a few days since Israel was able to take out Hassan Nasrallah, the head, of course, of Hezbollah there. Have we seen any of the attacks by Hezbollah in Lebanon on Israel actually slow down? It seems like they are still happening fairly consistently.
Yeah, so it's interesting. As you know, Josh, I'm in Israel right now, and I've been watching the mood and the way the government is communicating with people in the country about the security situation. And it does seem like a little bit of whiplash. On the one hand, you have this ground operation that's been announced now into Lebanon, and you'd expect that now would be the time for the security situation to be its most precarious. As I mentioned earlier, Hezbollah has at least had at the beginning of this war, at least 150,000, some have estimates 200,000 missiles, rockets, and drones that were built up exclusively to attack Israel. Now, Hezbollah has expended some of those. Like I said, about 10,000 rockets, just under 10,000 have been fired at Israel, rockets and drones. And Israel has been able to go into Lebanon and take out some of their capabilities. But by any experts' estimates, there are still tens of thousands of rockets in Hezbollah's possession. So in Israel, everyone's waiting around to see when is the other shoe going to drop. Israel just went in with this very bold and decisive move to essentially decapitate Hezbollah's leadership in Lebanon. And still, this situation seems to be sort of moving forward at a similar pace than it was before. Now, with that, there have been strikes in the past few days that have come deeper into Israel for the first time from Hezbollah. So that is an indication of escalation. However, it's not what some were expecting when you see the scope of the damage that Israel's managed to inflict on Hezbollah in the past few days.
There's been some officials within the White House who have hinted that Biden is essentially concerned about an attack by Iran on Israel as a result of the assassination there of Hassan Nasrallah. So does that appear to be a real possibility? Because we know that when we saw the assassination of another leader several months ago, Iran did say that they were going to attack. Obviously, that really didn't happen. So is there concern that Iran is going to launch some kind of major attack as a result of the death of Nasrallah?
So Iran is saying that the assassination of Nasrallah will not go unpunished. Iran is making all of the signs as if it does plan to retaliate. But it's taking its time. It announced, the regime in Tehran announced 5 days of mourning after the death of Nasrallah. So we're waiting out those days right now. And it does, you say, as you mentioned, Josh, Iran has not attacked since the assassination of Enia in Tehran last month. However, in April of this year, Israel did kill out an assassination, did take out a IRGC leader in Syria. Israel didn't take responsibility for that, but it's been widely assumed to have been Israel. And Iran did respond. So Iran has crossed that Rubicon before. It had, in April, it did shoot an array at Israel of 300 rockets, drones, and missiles, which came into Israel. Luckily, Israel was able to take down most of the threat with the help of allied forces, a US-led coalition, and none of those rockets were able to cause any fatalities in Israel. But it was a large array, and there's always the threat that Iran may do that. So right now, the language that's going on between Israel and Iran is very much one of Israel baring its teeth and hoping that this decisive moves, that its ability to decapitate Hezbollah, that its strong messaging about being able to reach even further than Lebanon or even Yemen, where Israel's also been active in the past few days, all of these are messages to Iran that are intended to have a deterrent effect and deflect future attacks from Tehran. So we'll see what happens with that, Josh.
And obviously a lot to discuss here. So my last question for you before I let you go. We know that the U.S. has said that they're going to send, quote unquote, a few thousand troops in addition to the ones that are already there in the Middle East to help protect Israel in case things do escalate. So is that an indication, based on what you've seen, that the U.S. is assuming there could potentially be an escalation of some kind?
So I think everyone is concerned that there may be an escalation, whether it's from Hezbollah, where they finally decide to release the tens of thousands of rockets that they're holding on to for whatever reason, or whether there is a direct attack from Iran. There's always that threat, and there has been a steady force buildup in the region from the U.S., but most of that has been on ships that are deployed either in the Mediterranean or the Red Sea or in other sort of nearby waters. If they are sending troops on the ground, the likelihood that I've heard as I talk to military experts, that those troops that would likely be used in the event of mass evacuations. There are a lot of U.S. citizens in Israel and in Lebanon, and if there is a major escalation, or if Iran gets into the mix, or if any one of these scenarios plays out and it gets messy, the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. military is going to want to evacuate large numbers of people quickly. And that's generally what's perceived to be this most recent influx of personnel from the U.S.
All right. Enia Krivine, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break all this down. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, as always, Josh, I mean, it's important to mention that we're focused on the northern front right now, but of course, Israel still has 2 divisions in Gaza. Israel's still fighting on a regular and almost nightly basis in the West Bank. And just in the past 3 days, there have been rocket and drone attacks from Yemen and Iraq that have actually come into Israeli airspace. So, you know, as we come up on the year anniversary of October 7th, I think it's important to sort of zoom out a little bit and remember that since October 7th, Israel's been in a steady state of ongoing terror attacks from 7 fronts. And really, it hasn't ended. Israelis are still living through October 7th and the repercussions almost a year into this war. So I'll leave you with that happy thought and wish that we have a quiet weekend and coming days ahead of us.
Let's hope. Thank you, Enia Krivine there with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. As always, thank you so much for being here with us.
Always a pleasure, Josh.